Hello there world and welcome to part 2 of my Elden Ring PVP guide video series. Now, my initial plan for this video was to talk about everything there is to know regarding making your build for PvP. However, in the process of researching this video, I found that there is enough information to talk about just regarding the level ranges that you should be in for duels and invasions. So that's what we're going to talk about here instead, before getting into the details of build building in the next video. So if you haven't watched part 1, where we just went over the basics of how PvP works in Elden Ring, as I said there, my main goal with these videos is to really encourage people who have maybe never done PvP in a Souls game before to go ahead and try it out, because I think it would be really fantastic to have as many people as possible be able to enjoy this fantastic aspect of the game. Before we get started, just a quick disclaimer: I'm still very new to the whole YouTube channel thing, with very little experience in stuff like editing or talking into a microphone. So any and all feedback to let me know if you found this video useful, what I could do better, or what else you might want to see is very much appreciated. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get right into it. So when it comes to making a build for PvP in Elden Ring, the first question you have to ask yourself is, what level is my build going to end up being? And for duels, the answer is pretty likely going to be 125. That's the level the community seems to have agreed on as the meta, and therefore it's the level you will see the most activity around the most popular duel arena at the Raya Lucaria Academy main gate. Now, you will obviously also find people doing duels here at lower or higher levels. Particularly 150 seems to be quite active at the moment, but as far as having the most players active, 125 seems to be the sweet spot. Regarding matchmaking, in addition to your character level, Elden Ring also takes into account the highest weapon upgrade level you have already achieved on your character. So keep in mind that it doesn't matter whether or not you still own that upgraded weapon, or if you discarded it or traded it away. If you reached a certain weapon upgrade level once, regardless of how, it's in there. And therefore it's important to remember that Patches drops a +7 spear if you kill him, which you can do pretty much right at the start of the game in Limgrave. Rogier drops a +8 rapier as part of his quest, and if you fight Edgar at the Revenger's Shack in Liurnia after progressing his quest in Castle Morn, he also drops a +8 halberd. So if you wanna stay under those weapon levels, just avoid these NPCs for now. At the meta level of 125, weapon level isn't really a concern anymore, however, since you can play through the game pretty comfortably at this level. And as a result, the people doing duels all have their weapons at +24 or +25 and +9 or +10 for unique weapons anyway, so you can't really screw yourself over by going too high. In that sense, doing duels is relatively clear-cut, while finding the right level for invasions, on the other hand, is a little bit more complex, since for invasions there really isn't a meta to begin with. So I have been doing a lot of invasions recently with my level 125 characters, and so far there seems to be a good amount of activity in a variety of places. But at this level you will see less and less people actively going through the levels for their own playthrough, and rather you will have teams who are specifically there to fight invaders. This is what is otherwise commonly known as gankers, and this might be a controversial opinion, but I really don't think gankers are a bad thing. Because as someone who has always had the most fun doing invasions in these games, gankers are my sparring partners. They're the other teams, they're the guys that I want to go up against. Since even for a game as fantastic as Elden Ring, people will eventually stop doing regular playthroughs, and at that point, for the online activity to continue, gankers are really necessary to have anyone to go up against if you want to invade. Now, just to be perfectly clear, a gank for me is the very specific situation of a team of players who have found themselves together in a certain area in order to use maybe the Taunter's Tongue item to lure invaders in, and then chase them through the level and try to kill them as fast as possible, while I as an invader will try to kill them, obviously. If you set your gank up to be just 3 or 4 people chilling around the side of Grace, never moving out of that spot, and overpowering any invader that comes in with very powerful spells and abilities just to screw with them, that might be the point where invasions start becoming a little bit less fun. However, I still think it's worth to go in there and engage with those situations and try to screw them right back, because for me all of this really is happening in good fun. But by and large, it's nice to have a little bit of movement with your gang squads and getting chased around the level until you run into a mob of PvE enemies and get the upper hand for a second and stuff like that. Also, especially if you're still new to invasions and trying to learn, those scenarios can be quite challenging and sometimes almost seem unwinnable at first. So if you're looking to do some more traditional invasions where you go up against just some guy with his friends playing through the game, staying lower at around level 80 to 90 with your weapons at plus 17 or plus 7 respectively is probably the best idea for now. Regarding multiplayer activity, this level range also seems to be the most active at the moment. However, I would expect that to change in the months to come in favor of the higher level ranges like 125 or 150, for example. A great tool to use when trying to figure out what level you want to be is the summon range calculator that I will link in the description. And as you can see here, with a level 80 character, I can invade people from level 72 to level 108, with weapons ranging from plus 12 to plus 22. So that should cover a lot of ground. Looking at my level 125 character with fully upgraded weapons instead, we can see that I now can invade people from a level 113 up to level 157, with weapons ranging from plus 19 to plus 25. Looking at that situation, it might even be worth considering to keep my weapon just under the maximum upgrade level, since that increases the range of our possible invasions by just a little bit more. And since, as we've talked about, invasions at that level often happening against players who are already done with their playthrough and have finished their builds, we could reasonably assume that they are level 125 as well and will not level their characters any higher. Therefore, as we can see here, it might be worth considering going up all the way to level 138. And of course, you can always take your character even higher to something like, say, level 150, which seems to be a level that is also favored by a lot of players. Although, as you can already conclude, you will now no longer be able to invade people that stayed at the meta level of 125. Doing invasions at even lower levels can also be a lot of fun, since people haven't gotten as far into the game yet and therefore their builds aren't as fleshed out, so you might see some different weapons and spells being used than what you otherwise see. But keep in mind that thanks to password summoning, negating the level restrictions for summons and rather just scaling their health and damage down, there are still plenty of bullgoats running around spamming rivers of blood and stuff like that even at lower levels. So let's say you'd like to invade people going through Liurnia. You might want to stay at a level 40 with your weapons at plus 8 or plus 3 for unique weapons. And if you want to invade people at the very beginning of the game in Limgrave, you will obviously want to stay even lower still. However, the thing here really is that since Elden Ring is a lot more open than the previous Souls games, it's gotten kind of harder and harder to really pinpoint where any given player might end up being level-wise at any given point in their playthrough. So for example, ever since I learned that I can get my Somberstone weapons up to plus 5 pretty much at the very start of the game with minimal effort, I did so in pretty much every playthrough since, before I even went to kill Margit. And the same goes for getting a bunch of levels early by cheesing the Night Cavalry boss on the bridge next to Lenny's Rise in Caelid, or Dragon Mom Greyroll outside Fort Feroth. And seeing as pretty much everyone knows about this by now, it's not unlikely that a lot of people will level themselves right out of the lower level ranges very early on. In addition, since invasion level ranges are percentage based, with the upper level limit from your own level reaching a lot higher than the lower level limit reaches down, if you really only want to invade the earliest areas of the game, you will only have a handful of levels to work with anyway. And also keep in mind that you will still have to go through at least part of the game yourself to collect all the weapons, spells and talismans that you want to use on your build. And that consideration brings us to another topic, mainly twinking. So twinking is commonly understood to be the act of going through the game intentionally staying at a very low level in order to obtain very powerful late game items and spells and weapons, and then go ahead and invade other low level players with them. And since Elden Ring gave us spirit summons, whose upgrades do not factor into matchmaking at all, and who are very often capable to take on even late game bosses by themselves, doing so has become easier than ever before. Also, thanks to the open world nature of Elden Ring, where you can avoid pretty much every standard enemy by just jumping on torrent and riding around them, almost any item, especially the flask upgrades, apart from the ones that are hidden in the Mountaintop of Giants, are actually very easily obtainable. Now, I don't really even want to get into the whole discussion of if drinking is just a terrible thing to do or if it's completely fine to do or whatever. All I want to say is that I personally choose to not do something like that because if I want to make a low-level invasion character, I want that character to feel like all the stuff that he uses could have theoretically been obtained by just playing through the game normally. And when it comes to what exactly that means and which items are still fair game and what other items might be a little overkill, you really have to make that judgment for yourself. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is where to actually go to do your invasions. So when it comes to finding the best areas to invade, here's what I have found works best. If you didn't know, pressing L1 on the map screen lets you see current multiplayer activity, where red circles indicate a high invasion activity, while the blue ones are for co-op. So if you want to invade yourself, you want to look for the brightest blue spots and go there. Unfortunately, those symbols don't take into account your current level range, so you will still have to do some deduction yourself in terms of where other players around your level might end up being. In addition, I found that if you see activity around a site of grace at the start of the smaller side dungeons like graves or catacombs, you will very often get an invasion pretty much instantly, whereas it might take a short while if you try to invade the more popular areas like the various legacy dungeons, for example. Now, I suspect this is because there won't be as many other invaders trying their luck in these locations, so the game just slots you right in there when you get there. And also it seems to me that after doing an invasion in any location, you might want to pull up the map afterwards and check for other active areas and go there for the next one rather than staying in one location for repeated invasions. Now, I don't have any hard data to back this up, it's just my personal observation that I don't seem to have to wait as long to invade again if I do it like that. So with this we have covered pretty much everything there is to know when it comes to level ranges and areas regarding PvP in Elden Ring. So in the next video we can finally start talking about how to actually make your build for PvP and how to choose your weapon. Thank you so much for listening, I really hope you found this video useful. As I said last time, I will really try and keep putting out videos at a regular basis, and also I will probably cover a lot more topics and maybe even different games as time goes on. So if there's any input at all that you could give me in the comments about how I could improve or what I might do differently or what you might want to see, I would be very thankful. Because to be honest, I still have no idea if what I'm doing here is actually worth your while, and at the end of the day that's what it's all about. So thanks again, have a wonderful day and see you very soon.